Today we're going to be talking about bad news. Not something we normally like to talk about, but it's actually something we really like to consume. A lot of experts have found that bad news spreads faster than any other type of news. And so that's one of the reasons why we wanted to talk about this, because one, we're seeing a lot of that in the marketplace today. And so sometimes we try to shy away from that and think, oh, that's not a good time. But it's actually one of the best times to engage with companies, and we'll talk about why and how we're able to identify which companies to work with. Now, as I mentioned before, typically we focus on companies that are growing because they're the easiest targets. They need more services, and the revenue obviously will grow with the company. But a lot of folks have had a lot more success with companies that are downsizing. Although the revenue streams may seem small, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to end at some point in the near future. If you've read the book, How to Get a Meeting with Anyone, or attended our call with Stu Heinicke, he goes through a lot of different case studies, but there's one particular case study, if you remember it from the book, where a gentleman has 100% appointment ratios, and he only focuses on companies that are experiencing downturns or difficulties or layoffs, something that would probably keep him very busy in today's day and age. And so what he does is he takes a sword and he engraves the decision maker's name on the sword, and then he sends it to them, and then he follows up with a phone call and asks them if you got the sword. And he explains the reason is, I'm not here to kill you, I'm here to defend your business, to fight for your business, to help you win your business back. And then he moves forward and talks to them about how he can do that. And so in a similar fashion, what we're trying to do is we're also trying to help these companies. If you remember the famous parable about the prodigal son, when he leaves home, he's not in the state of mind where he's willing to listen to his father. He's not interested in making changes, and a lot of you may experience customers like this. It's not until his money runs out and then there's a local famine that causes him to reflect and come back to the father looking for help. And so this is a great parallel for business, because our customers are in the same situation, and that's why it's much easier to cater to companies who are experiencing pain points than it is to work with companies that are growing. Although the revenue is better with the latter, it's easier to win business among companies that are shrinking. And so what we want to do is we want to be able to identify which companies are experiencing challenges. There's two different angles that we can look at. We can look at companies that have been recently hacked. So there's a number of keywords that I've found that have been helpful in identifying these companies. And so this would be used in looking at, for instance, Google News reports. You could do a search for security breaches, data breaches, hacked, data compromise, data stolen, data leak, data loss, leaked user, ransomware. Any of those keywords would pull up a lot of news articles, because this is still happening every day, and it's also, we've seen an increase because a lot of people are working from home, and so this is causing an increase in companies that are experiencing different types of hacks. But you can search for these and find lots of companies that have experienced this. Also, more related to what we're talking about today, companies that are experiencing financial challenges. These are the keywords that we have found here at Ensavel that are most effective. When we talk about companies that have, you can do keyword searches for locations closed, bankruptcy, restructuring, cut staff, cut workforce, layoffs, cut jobs, staff reductions, furlough. So any of those, you'll probably find unlimited prospects to start working with. We'll talk about what we're going to do next. But essentially, we want to be able to identify that target audience. Once you identify these companies, if you don't have contacts for them already, feel free to run a report through upsellreport.com. You'll get free contacts, everything that you need, a background check on the company. You can also look up businesscompetitors.org. Typically, we always recommend working with the competitors of any given company that you're engaged with, because it's your next best prospecting source. And so you can pull lists from businesscompetitors.org for that information. Again, if you're an Ensabled member, this information is going to flow automatically into your opportunities report. You'll see companies that have security breaches, downsizing, any type of financial contraction. All this information flows in here both for your clients and also for your clients' neighbors and competitors. So you'll see everything provided for you within that report automatically. You can see it categorized, but this will hopefully make it a little bit easier for you. Next up, the strategy that we're going to employ in this is going to take a little bit of work on your end. So identifying the companies is only half the battle, but the strategy really has to go hand in hand because we're not just going to call them up and try to sell them service. We want to make sure that we have a strong ROI. And so one of the things that we're going to approach, and we may not always be successful in this, but we will find that this particular strategy will open a lot of doors. And this is similar to what we talked about 2 weeks ago, where we were helping companies hopefully get out of their commercial lease contracts if they need to vacate their office space. In a similar fashion, we're going to try to get them out of their existing contracts because now is the perfect time to do so. So a lot of companies are going to need to be able to, maybe if they've laid off several thousand people, they may not need as much bandwidth or as many phone lines as they used to. And so your job is to be able to go in and see if you can help them either renegotiate their existing contracts or hopefully get them out of their existing contracts so that they can buy a new contract from you. And so there's a number of ways we can do this. You want to make sure that you review the contracts. They may not understand a lot of the verbiage, and you may not either, so you may want to engage a lawyer on that first iteration so that you can at least look at the strategy that he would employ and then use a copycat formula for future opportunities. But you can look at some of the verbiage and especially look at the service level agreements, which is something that you would be able to understand, and see if there's anything in there that would allow you to help them get out of their contract. With the SLA, one great resource you could look at is downdetector.com, which keeps historical information about outages related to a specific type of company. So if their vendor shows a number of outages over the past year, that's a good indicator that their service level agreement has been breached and that there may be a good opportunity to get them out of that contract. It's not guaranteed, but it's a good opportunity. Typically, experts recommend that you write a letter to the organization, the vendor, and express your concern about the services, and then about 2 weeks later write another letter expressing that you want to cancel the contract based off of the SLA or certain clauses that you're seeing within the agreement. And that's usually the best formula to start the process of getting them out of the contract. If that doesn't work, you can always try to renegotiate the contract and say, look, this is where we're at, we're in difficult times, and they might be able to work with you on that. In addition, there's a lot of different vendors that are offering buyouts, and so they may not be able to buy out a 36-month contract, but they may be able to help pay for maybe 6 months. So you can do it on a case-by-case basis. Some companies have different formal programs, but it would be helpful to understand what options are available. And almost always, if you just ask, typically the company's going to pay for it. We're seeing a lot of different companies that are offering 4, 5, 6x spiffs. It's not uncommon for them to apply those spiffs to the buyout contract service. And so, again, there's lots of wiggle room here if you just are willing to work with them. But again, the main thing that what we're trying to do here is we're trying to get a conversation with the client. And approaching it from this angle, especially when companies are being humbled, you'll find that it's a lot easier to get in the door and work with them. Now again, you want to always employ a lead exchange team, which is basically your referral network. A few of the members that you want to bring in on this particular strategy are business advisors, lawyers, direct reps for different carriers, and accountants. So these 4 members of your lead exchange, if you haven't joined the lead exchange, you can do so at leadexchange.org, set up a profile. What this does is it allows you to collaborate. The Ensabled platform can track invisible commonalities that exist between prospects and help you collaborate with other members of your referral network. So basically it just helps grease the wheels on those relationships, help formalize them, make it a lot easier if you haven't used it already. But it's important to involve these members because you really, in order to truly reduce your customer acquisition costs, you have to get other people involved. And the other people, the difference between traditional referral partners and lead exchange members is they complement each other rather than have overlap. And so from a lead exchange standpoint, what you're looking for are members that can help you win more opportunities by complementing each other and are targeting the same exact type of accounts just for a different product, but you strengthen each other from the overall product scheme. And so this is something you definitely want to employ in this type of a strategy. Some of these lead exchange members will be more valuable than others, but definitely the business advisors will hopefully be able to provide some definite help and information here for your clients. Now, if I was sending an email, we'd like to share these templates or ideas or examples with each of you when we do these calls. So this is something that I would do. If I saw a news article about a company that was experiencing significant drops, I would go straight to the top, the owner. I wouldn't deal with the IT department or anything like that. And I would say, I'm so sorry. That's the subject line, because that'll catch their attention. And again, this is just a template. I would say, I saw the news this morning about Nixon and wanted to reach out to see if there's anything I can do to help. I've worked in the technology business for many years and might be able to help you renegotiate your contracts. Do you have a few minutes to chat this week? So something very simple. One of the main things you want to do with in regards to emails is you don't want to give too much information up front. If you do that, you sound needy and you're going to scare them away. But just make it sound professional, simple enough to get a response. The most important thing is once you have a response and a cadence going, that's when you can start going deeper. And so anything that gets the prospect to respond is going to get you the most bang for your buck here. We've talked about this before, but it's always a good idea to remind you that the best time to send an email is Thursdays at 6 p.m. The reason being is that's the time when they're most likely to respond to your emails because that's when there's the least amount of distractions. Typically, executives are still going to be in the office at that time. Things are going to slow down. People are going to stop bugging them. So the likelihood of them responding is going to go much higher, and this is based off of the stats that we've seen. Also, before we jump into Q&A, I would also recommend, if you could, CC somebody. Either CC somebody at their company or CC someone at your company. But we found that individuals have a 25 to 30% higher response rate when you CC someone on the email. So again, just maybe there's somebody else that's below them, but it kind of makes them feel like they're obligated to respond because it adds it kind of adds a second set of eyes that if you don't respond, they're like, well, what's this about? Or maybe this is something that I'm supposed to pay attention to. And so all of these different components will definitely help you get to where you're at.